What happens when one of the most beloved talk show hosts in America goes head-to-head with British royalty and the conversation spirals completely out of control? What you're about to witness is the most shocking celebrity interview meltdown in recent memory, where polite pleasantries turned into a verbal battlefield that left everyone in the studio stunned. This is the story of how Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, found himself in the middle of a heated confrontation with Drew Barrymore that ended with security escorting him off the set. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because you won't believe how this all unfolded. Drew Barrymore sat across from Prince Harry in her signature cozy studio setup, her warm smile masking what was about to become television history. The cameras were rolling, the audience was settled, and everything seemed perfectly normal for what should have been a routine promotional interview. "So, Harry, I have to ask," Drew began, leaning forward with that familiar intimacy she brings to every conversation. "You've been so open about your struggles with mental health, your family dynamics, and finding your place in the world, but I'm curious about something that I think a lot of people wonder about." Harry shifted slightly in his chair, his media-trained smile still in place. "Of course, Drew. I'm always happy to share my truth. Well, here's what I'm wondering." Drew continued, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "You've talked extensively about privacy, about wanting to protect your family from media intrusion, about the pain that comes from having your life dissected in public. But then you've also written books, done interviews, created documentaries, and basically shared the most intimate details of your life with the world. Don't you think that's a bit contradictory?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Harry's smile flickered for just a moment, and you could see something shift in his eyes. The audience seemed to sense the tension building. "I think there's a difference between controlling your own narrative and having it controlled for you," Harry replied, his voice measured, but with an edge that hadn't been there moments before. "When I share my story, it's on my terms. When the tabloids make up stories about my family, that's invasion of privacy." Drew nodded thoughtfully, but she wasn't backing down. "I understand that distinction, I really do. But Harry, when you put your private family conversations in a book, when you detail arguments with your brother and father, when you share text messages from your Citroën, aren't you doing exactly what you're criticizing the media for? Doing your making private moments public." "That's not the same thing at all," Harry said, his posture becoming more rigid. "Those were my experiences, my truth. I have every right to share my own experiences." "But they weren't just your experiences, were they?" Drew pressed on, her interviewer instincts kicking in. "Those conversations involved other people who didn't consent to having their private moments shared with millions of people. Your brother didn't agree to have his arguments with you published. Your father didn't sign off on you sharing his private thoughts. How is that different from what you're accusing the media of doing?" The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath. Harry's jaw tightened, and for the first time since sitting down, his carefully constructed media persona began to crack. "Drew, I think you're misunderstanding the situation," Harry said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm not some celebrity looking for attention. I'm trying to break cycles of abuse and trauma. I'm trying to help people who are struggling with similar issues." "I absolutely respect that," Drew replied, her voice remaining calm and measured. "Mental health advocacy is incredibly important, and you've done real good in that space. But Harry, you can't use noble intentions to justify questionable actions. You can't say you're helping people while simultaneously hurting the people closest to you." "I'm not hurting anyone," Harry shot back, his composure beginning to slip. "I'm telling the truth. The truth isn't always comfortable, but it's necessary." "But whose truth?" Drew asked pointedly. "Because the truth is subjective, isn't it? Your truth about a conversation with your brother might be completely different from his truth about the same conversation. When you publish your version without giving him a chance to respond, you're not sharing the truth. You're sharing your interpretation of events." Harry stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The audience gasped audibly, and you could see the producer in the background frantically gesturing to the cameras. "I don't have to sit here and be lectured by someone who doesn't understand what I've been through," Harry said, his voice now clearly agitated. "You have no idea what it's like to grow up in that family, to deal with that institution, to watch your mother be destroyed by the very system you're defending." Drew remained seated, her expression serious, but not confrontational. "You're absolutely right, Harry. I don't know what that's like. I grew up in a completely different kind of dysfunction, but here's what I do know. Having grown up in the public, having made mistakes, having hurt people I love, sometimes the hardest truth to face is that we can be both the victim and the perpetrator. We can be hurt by our families and also hurt our families." "Don't you dare psychoanalyze me," Harry snapped, pointing his finger at Drew. "You don't know anything about my family or my situation." "I'm not psychoanalyzing you," Drew replied calmly. "I'm asking you to consider that maybe, just maybe, your pursuit of your truth might be causing real harm to people you claim to love, and maybe that's worth examining." The tension in the room was palpable. Harry began pacing behind his chair, his hands clenched into fists. The audience was completely silent, watching this real-time meltdown unfold. "You know what?" Harry said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "I came here thinking I was going to have a respectful conversation with someone who understood what it meant to overcome adversity. Instead, I'm getting attacked by someone who's clearly been influenced by the same media machine that destroyed my mother." Drew's expression shifted, her eyebrows raising slightly. "Harry, I haven't attacked you. I've asked you questions. If you feel attacked by questions, maybe that's something worth exploring." "Don't turn this around on me," Harry fired back, his pacing becoming more agitated. "This is exactly what they do. They ask loaded questions designed to make you look bad. Then when you defend yourself, they act like you're the problem. Who is they?" "Harry," Drew asked, her voice still remarkably calm despite the chaos unfolding. "Because right now, it's just you and me having a conversation. I'm not the media machine. I'm not the tabloids. I'm not your family. I'm just someone asking you to consider that maybe your actions have consequences for other people." "Of course, my actions have consequences," Harry said, whirling around to face her directly. "Everything I do has consequences because I'm not allowed to be human. I'm not allowed to make mistakes. I'm not allowed to tell my story without being crucified for it." "But Harry, you're not being crucified," Drew replied, her patience seemingly infinite. "You're being asked to take responsibility." "What is it? Difference between telling your story and weaponizing your story against people who can't defend themselves?" "Weaponizing." Harry's voice rose to a level that made several audience members visibly uncomfortable. "I'm not weaponizing anything. I'm sharing my truth about a family that cast me out, that refused to protect my wife, that chose their precious institution over their own son." Drew leaned forward in her chair, her expression becoming more serious. "Harry, I've watched your interviews. I've read the excerpts from your book, and what I see is someone who's clearly in pain, someone who's been hurt, someone who deserves compassion. But I also see someone who's using that pain to justify hurting others." "I'm not hurting anyone," Harry insisted, but his voice cracked slightly. "I'm defending my family. I'm defending my wife. I'm defending my children's future." "Are you?" Drew asked quietly. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're ensuring that your children will grow up knowing that their father publicly humiliated their grandfather, their uncle, their aunt. You're ensuring that every family gathering, every holiday, every milestone will be overshadowed by this public feud that you've created." "I didn't create this," Harry said, his voice now shaking with emotion. "They created this when they refused to stand up for Meghan. They created this when they leaked stories about us. They created this when they chose to protect William over protecting me." "Maybe they did," Drew acknowledged. "Maybe your family failed you. Maybe they made terrible choices. Maybe they prioritized the wrong things. But Harry, their failures don't justify your choices. You don't get to hurt people just because you've been hurt." "I haven't hurt anyone," Harry repeated, but the conviction in his voice was wavering. "Haven't you?" Drew pressed gently. "When you shared private conversations with your father, didn't that hurt him? When you revealed personal details about your brother's marriage, didn't that hurt him and his wife? When you made public accusations about your family's treatment of your wife, didn't that hurt your family's reputation and relationships?" Harry stopped pacing and stood perfectly still, his fists clenched at his sides. "They hurt me first. And there it is," Drew said softly. "That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not justice, not truth, not helping people. It's about revenge." "Don't you dare," Harry said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Don't you dare minimize what happened to us. Don't you dare act like this is just some petty family squabble. I'm not minimizing anything, Drew replied, her voice steady despite the clear thread in Harry's tone. I believe that you and your wife faced real challenges. I believe that you felt unsupported and hurt. But Harry, pain doesn't give you the right to cause pain. Being a victim doesn't give you the right to create victims. Create victims, Harry laughed bitterly. The only victims here are me and my family. My wife was driven out of the country. My children will grow up not knowing their grandfather or their uncle because of what they did to us. Your children will grow up not knowing their family because of choices you made. Drew corrected firmly. You chose to share private family moments with the world. You chose to make public accusations. You chose to write that book. You chose to do those interviews. Your family didn't force you to do any of that. They forced me to defend myself, Harry shot back. No, they didn't, Drew said, shaking her head. You could have chosen to take the high road. You could have chosen to work things out privately. You could have chosen to protect your family's privacy while still living your truth, but you chose the path that would cause the most damage to the people you claim to love. I do love them, Harry said, his voice breaking. That's why this is so hard. That's why I had to speak out, because I love them, and I wanted them to do better. But Harry, you can't force people to love you the way you want to be loved. Drew said gently, you can't punish people into changing. You can't humiliate people into treating you better. All you can do is control your own actions, your own choices, your own behavior. So what? I should just stay silent. I should just let them continue to hurt me and my family. No, Drew said firmly. You should protect yourself and your family. You should set boundaries. You should remove yourself from toxic situations, but you don't have to destroy other people in the process. You don't have to burn down the bridge while you're still standing on it. Harry slumped back into his chair, his head in his hands. For a moment, the studio was completely silent, except for the hum of the cameras. When he looked up, his eyes were red, rimmed, and desperate. You don't understand, he said quietly. You don't understand what it's like to be trapped in that system, to watch it destroy everything you love, to feel completely powerless. You're right, Drew said softly. I don't understand that specific experience, but I do understand feeling powerless. I do understand family dysfunction. I do understand making choices that hurt people. I love because I was hurting, and I understand that the only way to break those cycles is to stop participating in them. Stop participating in them. Harry's voice rose again. The brief moment of vulnerability vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Easy for you to say you got to walk away from your family dysfunction and build a new life. I don't get to walk away. I'm a prince. I'm tied to this family forever, whether I like it or not. But you did walk away. Drew pointed out. You moved to California. You stepped back from royal duties. You built a new life with your wife and children. You had the freedom to start fresh, but instead, you chose to drag all that dysfunction with you. I didn't drag anything, Harry snapped. I was forced to defend myself when they started leaking stories. When they started briefing against us, when they started trying to destroy our reputation. Harry, listen to yourself, Drew said, her voice taking on a more urgent tone. You're talking about your family like they're your enemies. These are people who supposedly love you, people you claim to love. How did it get to this point where you see them as the enemy? Because they chose to be the enemy, Harry said firmly. They chose the institution over family. They chose protecting William over protecting me. They chose their reputation over my wife's well-being. Or maybe, Drew said carefully, they were just trying to survive in an impossible situation, just like you were. Maybe they were just doing what they thought was best for everyone involved. Maybe they made mistakes, but maybe their mistakes came from a place of love and concern, not malice. Love and concern. Harry laughed harshly. Is that what you call it when they refuse to defend your wife against racist attacks? Is that what you call it when they leak private conversations to make you look bad? Is that what you call it when they prioritize their golden boy over their spare? I call it a family in crisis, Drew said simply. I call it people who don't know how to handle an unprecedented situation. I call it human beings making imperfect choices under extraordinary pressure. Stop making excuses for them, Harry said, his anger flaring again. Stop trying to paint this as some both-sides situation. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a pattern of behavior that goes back decades. Maybe it is, Drew acknowledged, but Harry, you're part of that pattern now. You're contributing to it. You're perpetuating it. And the saddest part is you're doing it in the name of breaking the cycle. I am breaking the cycle, Harry insisted. I'm refusing to stay silent. I'm refusing to let them control the narrative. I'm refusing to let them treat my family the way they treated my mother. No, you're not, Drew said, her voice becoming more forceful. You're doing exactly what they did. You're using the media to attack your family. You're sharing private information to damage people you don't like. You're choosing your public image over your family relationships. You're becoming the very thing you claim to hate. That's not true, Harry said. But his voice lacked conviction, isn't it? Drew challenged. Your mother complained that the royal family leaked stories about her private life. What did you do? You wrote a book sharing private stories about their lives. Your mother felt that Charles prioritized his public duties over their marriage. What are you doing? You're prioritizing your public crusade over your family relationships. It's not the same thing, Harry said weakly. It's exactly the same thing, Drew fired back. You're using the same tactics, the same justifications, the same victim mentality. The only difference is that you think you're the good guy. Harry stood up abruptly, his chair nearly tipping over. I don't have to listen to this. I don't have to sit here and be lectured by someone who doesn't understand what I've been through. You're right, Drew said, standing up as well. You don't have to listen to anything you don't want to hear, but that's been your problem all along, hasn't it? You only want to hear people who agree with you, who validate your feelings, who tell you that you're the victim in every situation. I am the victim, Harry said, his voice cracking with emotion. I'm the one who lost his mother. I'm the one who is ignored and dismissed. I'm the one whose wife was driven out of the country. And I'm sorry for all of that, Drew said genuinely. I'm sorry you lost your mother. I'm sorry you felt ignored. I'm sorry your wife felt unwelcome. But Harry, being a victim doesn't make you a saint. It doesn't make all your choices right. It doesn't give you the moral high ground. This interview is over, Harry said, moving toward the edge of the stage. I'm not going to sit here and be attacked by someone who's clearly been influenced by the same people who destroyed my family. Harry, wait. Drew called after him. This isn't an attack. This is a conversation. This is what happens when someone challenges you to think differently, to consider other perspectives, to take responsibility for your actions. I take responsibility for my actions, Harry said, turning back to face her. I take responsibility for protecting my family, for telling the truth, for refusing to be silenced. But do you take responsibility for the pain you've caused? Drew asked. Pointedly, do you take responsibility for the relationships you've damaged? Do you take responsibility for the way your children will be affected by this public feud? Children will thank me for standing up for them, Harry said. But his voice was shaking. Will they? Drew asked quietly. Or will they resent you for making their family relationships impossible? Will they thank you for ensuring that every family gathering is awkward and painful? Will they thank you for making sure that they can never have a normal relationship with their grandfather and uncle? Stop it, Harry said, his voice breaking. Just stop it. I'll stop when you start being honest, Drew said firmly. Not honest about what they did to you, but honest about what you've done to them. Not honest about how you've been hurt, but honest about how you've hurt others. I haven't hurt anyone, Harry repeated, but now he was crying. Harry, look at me, Drew said gently. Look at me and tell me honestly that your father isn't hurt by what you've shared about him. Look at me and tell me that your brother isn't hurt by what you've revealed about his marriage. Look at me and tell me that your family isn't suffering because of the choices you've made. Harry couldn't look at her. He stood there, tears streaming down his face, unable to speak. You can't, can you? Drew said softly. Because deep down, you know that you've caused real pain to people you love, and that knowledge is eating you alive. I had to, Harry whispered. I had to protect my family. No, you didn't, Drew said firmly. You chose to. And until you can admit that, until you can take responsibility for that choice, you'll never be able to heal. You'll never be able to move forward. You'll never be able to break the cycle you claim to want to break. Harry looked up at her, his face stir with tears, his composure completely gone. "I can't take it back now. Even if I wanted to, I can't take it back." "No, you can't," Drew agreed, "but you can choose to stop making it worse. You can choose to stop participating in this destructive pattern. You can choose to put your family's well-being ahead of your need to be right. You don't understand," Harry said desperately. "If I stop fighting, they win. If I stop telling my truth, their version becomes the only version." "Harry, this isn't a war," Drew said sadly. "This is a family, and in families, when everyone loses, no one wins." At that moment, security appeared at the edge of the stage. Harry looked around wildly, as if suddenly realizing where he was, what had just happened, how completely he had fallen apart on national television. "This is exactly what they wanted," he said, his voice filled with desperation. "They wanted Emmy to look unstable, to look like the problem." "No one wanted this," Drew said quietly. "This is just what happens when pain meets truth. This is what happens when someone finally holds up a mirror and forces you to see what you've become." Harry didn't respond. He turned and walked off the stage, leaving Drew standing alone in the stunned silence of the studio. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the aftermath, the audience sitting in shocked silence, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Drew looked directly into the camera, her expression a mixture of sadness and resolve. Sometimes the most important conversations are the hardest ones to have. Sometimes love means refusing to enable destructive behavior, even when it's painful for everyone involved. And with that, the interview that was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance became a moment of television history that no one would ever forget. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Did Drew go too far, or was this exactly what Harry needed to hear? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and make sure to subscribe for more shocking celebrity moments that you won't see anywhere.